I think that's where the world gets in your ear. So now I've been positioned with understanding that wealth doesn't make you confident. Wealth doesn't determine anything other than, if you can pay your bills on time every month, that's a great thing. So don't think that I'm over here saying that's not a great thing. It is. But it doesn't determine your whole journey. And going into the work world for the first time and suddenly encountering, wow, you can be treated like this and it's okay, or the misogyny that exists in the work world in all industries, I then started to experience one time in work. And then the world tells you, you have to shrink down. That didn't come from my home. That didn't come from any of the women who raised me. And now I go out into corporate world, and it's not just women of color, women in general, you know your place, even in the news industry. That's the irony of the industry. We would report on said company in trouble for, whatever actions in the workplace. And it was existing in our industry too. So you imagine how out of body that is. You're talking about other industries, but it's happening in your own. So for me, it was the world. And so the society says, wait a minute, you're 38 and you're not married. You're 36, wait, what? And so around 35, I think, I'll be very honest, that's the first time and maybe the most significant time that I felt the weight of society's expectation of me as at age and women and marriage. And I was in a relationship with someone, and it was not a good relationship. There's a person who was verbally abusive, just not nice to me. I feel that he felt insecure about my success, and I was very successful at the time. I was in Chicago. He'd had his own personal childhood trauma and struggles, and I became the recipient of that through verbal just nastiness, or not celebrating the things that I was doing, or just, anything, all the time. And I was afraid to end the relationship because I didn't want to have another failed relationship. And I had, great relationships and fun relationships, and guys who, proposed. I've been engaged, I think, like 5 times, somewhere like that.
Wow.
But each time I knew I wasn't going to go through with it, but I didn't know how to say no to someone in front of you on a Michigan Avenue bridge proposing. You're like, oh God, what am I gonna do? But yeah, I did. And then when I was in my 30s, like I said, I found myself in this relationship, and it was really bad. And I hated myself for being in it.
Why did you hate yourself for being
Because
in
I
it?
knew I wasn't supposed to be in it. But I was afraid to tell other people that I didn't want to be with this guy. I'd introduced him to my friends, and we'd gone on trips with my friends, and now I would have to say again, it didn't work out. And we know the line becomes, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? And I think I even had people say, well, did you ever wonder if it's you? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Is it me? Like, yes, personal accountability in relationships, but I didn't want to be married. So there wasn't anything wrong with me. I wanted to date. I wanted to go on a vacation or 2. I wanted to pursue my career. And I knew that everyone else was going to be second while I was pursuing this career. I never said it out loud, but I knew it in my mind. And I also knew that I didn't want a child until I was ready to be in a committed relationship. So it wasn't so complex to me. I knew it. I'm working. I had to be up at 3:30 in the morning. And I also recognized that my mother, who's a phenomenal mom and a phenomenal grandma, was 2,000 miles away. So I had no support system to help me with my child, all of these things that are real conversations. I wasn't a career woman per se, and I don't even know what that means. I was just a woman doing what I love. And what I loved required me to get up at 3:30 in the morning. And so now I'm in this relationship with this person who, when I met him, of course, I was like, oh my God, this is dreamy. And then it turned bad, really bad. And then my sister was murdered. And I went home, and we learned that it was likely the result of domestic violence. And I called that person, and we were living together. I called my friend first, and I said, can you go to my home, and can you go to the driveway, and he's going to come down with the key. And my friend's like, oh boy, really? And I said, if you don't want to do it, I totally understand. My friend said, no. And I said, and then now when I look back at it now, I probably shouldn't have done it that way because you never know someone's reaction. But at the time I was taking a stand.
Yeah.
And I called my friend waited. I called the individual and I said, this is over. And my friend is downstairs. If you could take the key down and get your things as quickly as possible. There's nothing else here for us. And that was it.
Obviously, I know that you can't necessarily answer this with accuracy, but the fact that it took obviously your sister to have died for you to recognize the severity of the relationship that you were in and how bad that can be, do you think you would have stayed if that hadn't have happened to your sister?
Maybe a little longer. I don't think forever, but I don't know. And it wasn't because I thought he was going to take the verbal to physical. I knew that I was not supposed to be in that situation. I knew it wasn't healthy. And I knew that the fear of people thinking something was wrong with me and why am I not married was nothing. It was in my head. Even if their words were real, and even if their opinions were real, and even if their thoughts were real, then they can let it live in their heads. It is not going to live in my head. And so I, at that moment, again, decided to bet on myself and not let my story be created or written by anyone else but me. And I asked him to leave, and I ran into him years later, just briefly, and hi, whatever, but, I've never told anybody this story in this detail. My friends know, of course, but nothing publicly, and so he'll probably watch this and go, I think she's talking about me. But, I refrain from even sometimes talking about that side of my life because I recognize why he was where he was, mentally and emotionally. And I think for me, when I look at the scope of my dating life, which really significantly probably started at 18 years old, that doesn't mean anything's wrong with him or wrong with me.